This film was the last year's Palme d'Or winner at Cannes and was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and also Best Screenplay. It's kind of surprising for those because this is a foreign film. Ruben Ostlund has previously done Force Majeure, was a Swedish film, The Square, also. And he kind of has this style of social satire, very dry kind of humor. Force Majeure is a classic. They made a terrible American comedy version of it that's not very good. But anyways, Triangle of Sadness is about a kind of group of people who go out on this luxury cruise. And they're incredibly wealthy, and we get to meet both the very wealthy and then the people working on the boat. This sounds like a lot of reality TV has this exact same premise. But we kind of meet our main-ish characters early on in Harris Dickinson and Charles B. Dean, who are up-and-coming models, trying to become a part of the wealthy and elite. They are not in that circle, but they kind of look like they have this big argument kind of about money in the first act before we end up on the boat. We meet a number of different personalities, a lot of old wealthy people who are completely out of touch with just regular people and who ask for ridiculous things and have ridiculous expectations, and are kind of also the causes of their own problem. The trailer gives a lot away, but eventually there's a big storm. Everything kind of goes wrong, and the ship kind of, people are eventually stranded on an island. That's our overarching plot, but it's more about like the characters and relationships and kind of day-to-day awkward circumstances between the very wealthy and just normal people. So Zach, what'd you think?
I like this movie. I don't love it, unfortunately. I this seemed to come out like right next to a few features that were kind of like spearing the ultra rich and ultra elite. Like The Menu last year, but we missed it for the show, and now it's on Hulu, which is where we watched it. And while I think it's got some fangs for sure. Like there's some really funny bits they're like really biting. It is like left kind of toothless by like just its beating of a runtime. The pacing in this movie is really poor. It's really poor pacing, and I can't decide why. I still think about it. Like, why is this movie so long for what's there? Because if it was like a tight 95 minutes, I would think so much more of it as like this charming, like bright spot in a sea of other like otherwise like kind of dull films. Like Triangle of Sadness does a lot really well, but it's so agonizingly slow, and I don't think it helps the movie. I think it kind of hurts it.
It almost feels like a series to me. Act 1 is about 25 minutes long and is just our two fashion leads who are arguing about money and kind of gender roles, and then we get to the boat for Act 2, and that's an entire hour, and Act 3 is also an entire hour, and it's almost like you could just start on the boat. You could cut down that argument and have them, or just have Acts 2 and 3 be shorter. But it feels like I said, it feels like a series. Add another episode or two and call this a limited series. But it's, like you said, it's agonizingly slow. There are some funny parts. Ruben Ostlund has very kind of dry humor, and a lot of his humor is about this awkward and uncomfortable conversations that people end up having. But it's also this critique of the wealthy is like kind of a, well, duh. That's like saying that an arms dealer is a bad guy, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, wealthy people are completely out of touch and are, not great people a lot of times. They're not. He's not really telling us anything we don't already know.
Yeah, it walks this fine line between wealth and beauty, and it questions like is beauty inherently, does that inherently derive wealth, or is it all a wash? Like, can you derive wealth from the ugly, like the uninspired, like the disgusting even? And this has worked most effectively through its presentation of characters, namely Carl and Yaya are two kind of like fashion model leads who are in a relationship. And these characters on the boat, one of them namely a Russian fertilizer dealer. Is that his thing? Or is he like an arms
Yeah,
dealer and that
yeah.
was just a gag? I could never
No,
figure
he's
it out. But
he's a fertilizer
yeah, and
dealer.
he says he sells, fertilizer. He states it very openly, and this man like looks like the crypt keeper and looks disgusting and is like greasy, and like his girlfriend is gross, and it brings into question like what does it mean to like be beautiful, and is that of any value at all, or is that just derived by society? Do people think that we should give money to beautiful people because they're beautiful, or what? This works out most effectively in the presentation of the cruise ship. I think that's its strongest act. This kind of section 2, when we have our serving class, a bunch of like very energetic, like very very bright poppy young waiters and waitresses that are helping out, deckhands and stuff that are helping around the boat, who are never going to say no to anything, and the people on the boat who are just like vapid and narcissistic and completely in their own worlds, and couldn't care less, right? And most of the serving staff are very attractive people, and half the wealthy people are like ugly as sin, and are terrible people and talk about awful things and treat each other terribly. And it's a clever commentary, I think, and it gets. I think it's best when it's visual, like the big wreck and the storm that turns into like the ship getting washed up on land. It's a whole thing.
I think I enjoyed the third act better when they there's kind of they get shipwrecked and like half the people end up on this island, and it turns into a little bit of Lord of the Flies situation where all of a sudden the people with wealth are useless and also have nothing to offer, because you have some of the kind of deckhands who actually know how to like start fires and catch fish and these sort of things, and all of a sudden the power dynamics dramatically shift because of the what is actually useful in this situation. And to me that was a very interesting more interesting part of the movie. It still drags in that as well. It's just so undisciplined. I'm like I said, I'm surprised it's got a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, like it reminded me cinematography wise of David Fincher, because David Fincher shoots everything on a tripod and is infamously thought of like a just shut up and shoot it kind of director. Like he's complicated, but like he just locks the camera on a tripod and he sets up the scene and then shoot it and then all right, move the camera on tripod, next scene, like really simple. And this is the same way. Camera's always locked down, very solid, like very very set, but it just doesn't go anywhere. Like it's just a little too slow. Some of those cruise ship scenes are like agonizingly long, and the fight that Carl and Yaya having in Act 1 is like really vain, and you don't really care. It does have some funny moments, namely with Harris Dickinson in an elevator. But I agree. I think Andy's right. The meat of it's in Act 3. That's where the real lesson comes from, when power dynamics shift and suddenly the people who are on the boat, like who are the wait staff and the deckhands, now have skills on the island for survival, and the wealthy people have nothing to offer, and suddenly things change. But I like this through line that it's got of that things will never change, like in this fear that like this is how things will always be, when one of our characters is played delightfully by what is her name? I got Dolly De Leon in Act 3, who's great in this movie. I've never seen her in anything else. I hope she does more stuff I see. She's great in this movie. She is what is she? A maid? She was a custodian basically on the boat, and now on the island has skills and has decided, well, I'm going to be the leader here and tell everybody what to do. And the wealthy people are like, well, that's not fair. And she's like, okay, what are you going to do now? Huh? We're going to go out in the woods and die. And as soon as like that is challenged in any way, everybody immediately writes her off as useless again, despite the fact that she would be ultimately like the thing that would save them. Like it's funny and it's sharp. It's dulled by just the time to get there. Like just a lot of time between activity, where I think you're supposed to just kind of like sit in your seat and think thoughtfully about what you're seeing, but like watching it at home like makes it tough to not just like get your phone out, right, and see if somebody texted you or go change your laundry.
I had to take a break for about a half hour and do something else because I just didn't have like the mental focus to kind of get through it. It was really it was just great. And it's one of those movies, it is very fun to discuss once you've seen it because there are a lot of interesting concepts and things that happen, but it was such a chore. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. It is so long and so slowly paced. I wanted to talk about, so Force Majeure was kind of the movie that put Ruben Ostlund on the map. And part of what's fascinating in that film, the premise is a father kind of abandons his family when a catastrophe is imminent. The catastrophe doesn't happen, and all of a sudden he looks really bad for having kind of abandoned, just briefly, like run from this big thing that was about to happen. And the conversation keeps coming up again. Like his wife keeps bringing it up to every new people they meet because they're on this at this resort. But it's very interesting look at like family dynamics and gender roles, and has some really interesting things to say and look at. And that's kind of what I feel we're missing here. Like we're not being told anything we don't know about wealth and power.
A little bit, and unfortunately, it's not told in like a way that I think is accessible enough for most people. Like I think this would alienate more people than it would appeal to, but in that way, I should say, it's niche. And if you're into this niche, if you're into this like recent run of like jabs at the wealthy and elite via like Tar or The Menu, like I don't think it's a bad time. Just maybe watch it in bits. Like I think Ruben Ostlund might be better with the series next. Like give him 3 episodes of something or 6 on some streamer and like let him run a little bit. Like I think he would play with the runtime more, because this one's just like, it's a really specific choice. I just don't understand it. Like it just kind of ends up being really offbeat.
Well, and I wonder if maybe just the subject matter is the reason it was winning all these awards and getting nominated, because I mean it was just such a drag. Like it won Palme d'Or, it was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, and I was like, man, really, this has been a struggle. Like, I'd rather go watch Tar again.
Yeah, Tar also super long, but very fun. Obviously, rooted by Cate Blanchett. I thought this movie was good. Also, real quick, we should mention Woody Harrelson is, for me, a bright spot in this movie, but he's not in enough of it. He's not in enough of this movie to really stand out. But they put him on every piece of advertising they could. So, good for them. Hey, like he's a great get.
Yeah, I'm really not sure why his character is in this movie at all. He's not in it very much. He doesn't really have an impact.
I feel like he must have just been friends with some, I don't know, somebody, Ruben Ostlund or somebody knows him.
Maybe they just needed to attach a big name.
Maybe. Andy, would you recommend Triangle of Sadness?
Oof. Only to the most diehard cinephile wanting to look at this movie. That there was a lot of buzz last year at Cannes and also at the Oscars. And I think he is a talented director. He just needed someone to rein him in. There's a lot of interesting ideas. Like I said, it's more fun to discuss after you've seen it than it is to sit through it. Watch it in parts if you're interested, but probably not for everyone.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, I think. Like I said, it's niche. Like, if you're into this kind of cinema, like, I think you'll have a good time. But I think even you would admit, like, it getting out of it, like, it is a little slow, man. Like, it just takes a while to get to where it's headed. But it's full in that way. Like, there are a lot of good gags in there, like, lots of really funny, subtle stuff, whether that be, like, really slapsticky or more, like, thoughtful and pulled back. Like, I like Triangle of Sadness fine. I'll go see what Ruben Ostlund does next. Like I think it's my first outing with him as a director. Like, not bad, I would say, but just it's tough to get through. Also, content warning. The second act turns pretty disgusting. With that, we should talk about what we're doing next week. Andy, what are we doing next week?